Section 1. You will hear two students, Peter and Mary, discussing their new eating plan. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 5. You will see that there is an example that has been done for you. On this occasion only, the conversation relating to this will be played first.
Okay, Mary. I know I'm putting on weight with all my bad eating habits.
That's right. Chocolate bars, pizzas, and all washed down with litres of soft drink. And with all the sugar in soft drink, I think we can say you're definitely overindulging, don't you think?
Peter consumes far too much soft drink, so soft drink has been written in the space. Now we shall begin. You should answer the questions as you listen, because you will not hear the recording a second time. Now listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 5.
Okay, Mary. I know I'm putting on weight with all my bad eating habits.
That's right. Chocolate bars, pizzas, and all washed down with litres of soft drink. And with all the sugar in soft drink, I think we can say you're definitely overindulging, don't you think?
I know. I intend to definitely stop drinking that from now on.
And that's part of the sensible eating plan that we have agreed we need to formulate. One that we can both follow.
That's right. Sensible and practical. Allowing us to indulge in some sweet foods on occasions.
On rare occasions. And we're going to cut out all the pizzas and hamburgers.
Well, not totally. I thought you said pizzas could be eaten once a week. You know how I like pizzas.
No, I said once every 2 months. Once a week was ice cream, not pizza.
Yeah, that's because you like ice cream. I prefer pizza.
Peter, if you want to lose weight, you need to be disciplined in both what you eat and what you do, which brings us to the issue of exercise.
That's right. So, jogging twice a week and hiking on Saturdays, right?
No, hiking is Sundays, allowing Saturdays for the light walking exercise. I've investigated and discovered there are a lot of walking trails around this suburb, with many beautiful places if you just look around.
So what's happening this Saturday? A walk around the city?
That's later in the month. This Saturday we'll visit Pine Park.
Hill Park is nicer, with great views too.
Yes, but we have to travel too far to reach Hill Park, so I ruled that out, and I love the smell of pines.
And what about the weekday meals? Salads every night, I suppose.
No, it's important to vary the meals so that the food remains interesting and fun. The only common factor is the fruit juice, but otherwise we'll have a variety of healthy fare, from salads to fish to lean meat.
I'd rather have meat every night, but you're the boss.
If you want to lose weight, you'll have to accept this program, okay?
Okay.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 6 to 10. Now listen and answer questions 6 to 10.
Now, Mary, you said we could have a little treat in our diet plan 3 times a week, specifically Tuesdays, Thursdays and Sundays.
Yes, a very small treat, but something to reward us for all the discipline shown. Such rewards will motivate us to continue the diet.
So on Tuesdays, what can I choose?
You have a choice between a small serving of chocolate, ice cream or biscuits.
Okay, well, I'll go for the biscuits. I love those crunchy little things with my cup of tea. So do you, right?
I do indeed, so I'll have them too, saving the ice cream for later.
But I know how much you like ice cream, so why don't you save it for the end of the week? That will give you the motivation to keep going, and you can have chocolate midweek.
That's a good idea, but I think the most important thing is for you and I to eat different things on those other 2 days.
Well, if you think that way, I'll eat the ice cream on Thursdays, not the chocolate, okay?
Well, if you're having that, then I can't have ice cream. In order to be different, I'll have the chocolate.
So we can compare our different snacks, and maybe even share a little with each other.
Exactly. And the variety and fun involved will take our minds off wanting more.
Eating for fun. A good idea.
And then you can have the chocolate on Sunday, right?
But I like biscuits. Actually, I want biscuits again to have with my cup of tea.
But you have the biscuits on Monday, remember? And we can't repeat.
Oh, come on. This isn't fixed in concrete. I can have them again instead of chocolate. You might like variety, but I don't. I'm a creature of habit.
Well, the whole point of this was to taste different snacks. But if you want the same thing, okay. I, for one, am sticking to the original plan, with ice cream to finish the week and not another dose of chocolate.
That is the end of section 1. You now have half a minute to check your answers. Now turn to section 2. Section 2. You will hear the manager of the fitness centre giving information about the centre to some new customers. First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 15. Now listen carefully and answer questions 11 to 15.
Hello everyone, and welcome to the Fit for Life Health Centre, a place which, as the name suggests, is not just for short-term solutions, but rather intends to put you on a sensible and achievable footing for the rest of your life. And that's how we're different. For example, we could immediately put you on a harsh exercise program, expecting you to work out every day, but such a plan would see you quickly lose interest. That's why the initial step is a 1.5-hour consultation in which your lifestyle, current situation and long-term goals are all thoroughly analysed. Now, an important part of this consultation involves analysing what you eat. There's no point exercising here and losing weight, then putting it all back on later. You will need to show self-control and discipline in your diet, and we'll work on that. Similarly, we'll put you on an exercise regime suitable for your level of fitness. So that will involve a test where we will take you through some activities, then measure your heart rate and blood pressure to determine how fit you are. This will be monitored during every subsequent consultation, along with your exercise schedule, and that occurs monthly and not half-yearly, as with many other centres. As to our actual exercise machines and programs, you will have to decide whether it is muscle mass, stamina, or general fitness that you want to develop. Think about which of these 3 you want to target, and we'll design a specific program for you. But remember, bulging muscles aren't necessarily suitable for everyone. Sometimes it's better to think in terms of 2 simple concepts: muscle definition and stamina, or, if you are female, being fit and healthy, in both mind and body.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 16 to 20. Now listen and answer questions 16 to 20.
Now, if you're going to work out at this gym, you'll need to think about your reasons for exercising. So let's consider that in more detail. Muscle mass is certainly popular with the guys, probably seeking to impress the girls. And with muscles comes the confidence to do that, right? Well, for that, you'll need our high-stress weight units, where pumping iron is all the rage. Moving on to other benefits, one of the main ones is beating the tension of life, right? And the longer the exercise is, the greater the rewards in this respect. Thus, playing squash can certainly help, and so can swimming. But what's much better, as every jogger will tell you, is their activity. So we have ample jogging machines and they're always popular. They can provide good fitness too, as can the yoga classes. However, again, let's not forget playing squash, which I would say is the optimum way to improve your general well-being. Such an active, energetic game, plus the competitive element, drives you forward into high levels of health and fitness. These, of course, are the ultimate purposes of being here, but remember, the centre is full of like-minded people, all of whom are interesting to meet and valuable sources of information. The yoga classes have a pre- and post-meeting session, so you'll certainly meet others there, although they'll all be yoga enthusiasts, which limits the range somewhat. But whether doing yoga, swimming or exercising, everyone showers, right? So those facilities are where you'll hear all sorts of interesting conversations and really get to know people. Not like the front desk area, which is mostly empty as patrons go immediately inside to do their exercise. Of course, the front desk can answer all your questions and has information brochures and such like, but for knowing more about a greater variety of subjects and community concerns, look at the notice board in the yoga studio, where there's a huge array of papers, leaflets and articles, all for you to read and consider.
That is the end of section 2. You now have half a minute to check your answers. Now turn to section 3. Section 3. You will hear two students, Dylan and Emily, discussing the techniques they use when listening to lectures. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 24. Now listen carefully and answer questions 21 to 24.
Hi, Emily. What did you think of that lecture?
A bit hard to follow, but I have some good lecture listening note-taking strategies which really help, so I can review the lecturer's message later.
Lecture listening note-taking strategies? Review it later? That sounds interesting. I must admit, I struggle a bit to take down the gist of what I hear. Look at my notes.
Well, I can see a basic problem immediately. You're writing full words, such as century, when all you need is a C. And don't write increase, just draw an up arrow. And why write thousand when a TH will do?
I see. Just use symbols. That's not a bad idea at all.
It's the most basic strategy, allowing you to record information at a faster pace. These lecturers can talk faster than others too, so you don't want to waste any time. But you need to be very familiar with your set of symbols.
Why?
Because you'll have to look at these notes days, weeks, or even months afterwards when you begin writing your essay. So you'll need to be able to interpret them at a later stage.
I think I can do this, even by looking at your notes. Imed must mean immediately.
But regarding the lecture as a whole, I knew the professor would be giving a set of specific recommendations and comparing two alternative approaches, so I formatted my page in advance, adding the features consistent with the nature of what I was going to hear.
I think I need an example of what you mean.
Well, look at my page. Before the lecture, I drew large headings saying recommendations. You should always draw these, and I draw a table saying approach 1 and approach 2. At the end, I drew a flowchart, as obviously the final recommendation would be a step-by-step approach. Then I was prepared in advance to simply fill in the spaces.
Wow! Now that's clever.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 25 to 30. Now listen and answer questions 25 to 30.
Your advice about note-taking sounds great, but I still have one question, Emily. How are you able to design your page in advance? I mean, how can you predict the nature of the talk and know which design is likely to work best?
It's rather obvious when you think about it. What's your next lecture about?
Legal studies.
Well, that suggests to me that you'll need a flowchart, since the judicial system has a very logical, do this first, do that second approach. which must be followed in that order. You know, all the processes that happen in the courtroom and the procedures that must take place to ensure complete legality.
Sure, that's the way law is, very linear and orderly. But what about culture studies? That's just a mass of comparisons of different cultures.
Which tells you that you'll need a table where, in tabular form, you can efficiently write down information.
But often the lecture's not that simple. The professor throws in a really complex mix of ideas.
Then use a spider graph, like the web a spider makes, where there's a central idea around which you attach all the associated thoughts and ideas and impressions.
I see. I think I understand. And that would be very quick too, very efficient. I like that. But what about management theory? How would you approach that?
The same as with culture studies. I'd use a network, which is basically the same as a spider graph, linking thoughts, although this time there are directions involved. It is this element that makes it different, the fact that the thoughts go one way and not the other.
Okay, has directions. It sounds logical. And what about the other subjects, such as political science? There's no predictable order to that.
Well, for that I'd just put my notes in a line, that is, in linear or straight line fashion, and these notes would use symbols, of course, to save time.
Okay, that just leaves mass media.
For that, I wouldn't have any special design at all. As you say, sometimes it's impossible to predict in what way lecturers will present their information, in which case the best you can do is pre-write headings, but not specific, just general, as in Main 1, Main 2, Sub 1, 2 and 3, and so on.
Okay.
But always be prepared to adapt to the nature of the talk, using any one of the other methods if it becomes appropriate at the time.
That is the end of section 3. You now have half a minute to check your answers. Now turn to section 4. Section 4. You will hear a lecturer talking about the movement of population towards cities. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 and 32. Now listen carefully and answer questions 31 and 32.
If you consider the farms of old, the type your father or grandfather grew up on, they were small and labour-intensive, requiring lots of workers. In addition, they often had a diversity of products, be that animal or vegetable, say cows and sheep, or oranges and lemons, with some peaches and a few chickens on the side for the production of eggs. The many workers involved raised their families who needed products and support services, such as medical clinics and schools, so the small country towns had mercantile activity, storefronts and community participation with all ages present and a distinct town culture. And how it has changed. Travel to any small country town in virtually any developed country, and you will often see that these places are now somewhat forlorn and deserted, lacking life and vigour. Many of the residents have long since moved towards the big cities, so the country areas have become depopulated and their downtowns empty. This phenomenon is so predictable and widespread that it even has a name, rural flight or rural exodus, and it has produced some fairly predictable problems.
Before you hear the next part of the lecture, you have some time to look at questions 33 to 35. Now listen and answer questions 33 to 35.
As for the causes of rural exodus, the most obvious is the industrialisation of agriculture. This comes in two aspects, one of them being monocultural farming practices. What this means is that it is now more efficient to have one product and focus on its needs almost exclusively. So, for example, animal husbandry will usually involve a single type of animal, say pigs, but with huge factory farming techniques, or, in other words, the second aspect, economies of scale. This means instead of 200 pigs, there'll be 2,000, tightly fitted into small pens or cages with high-density waste disposal and automatic feeding systems. Yet, despite this huge size, it can all be controlled by just a dozen farm workers pushing the right button. You might not like it, but in a competitive market, the cheaper the overheads, the better, and one can't argue with market economics. It's simply the way of the modern world, and it has changed the face of rural districts, mostly for the worst.
Before you hear the rest of the lecture, you have some time to look at questions 36 to 40. Now listen and answer questions 36 to 40.
We can talk at length about the problem of rural exodus, but what about solutions? Well, there is certainly some cause for hope, since many are now feeling the negatives of increasing urbanisation, negatives which the countryside generally does not have. Thus, tourism, for example, is certainly one avenue of revenue and revitalisation. The most important consideration here is that the local residents themselves participate in developing such initiatives and deciding what happens, since outsiders, be they state government or city-based planners, do not fully understand the local settings, the possibilities which may be on offer, or the town culture, since even small rural areas can be highly distinctive from neighbouring ones. For example, the Daylesford area has developed a tourist industry based on the natural springs there, putting forward the angle that this water is relaxing and revitalising for the health. There has been the development of spas, saunas and small-scale accommodation within its picturesque hillsides. And another solution is to utilise the predominant local product. This takes advantage of the fact that many city people are developing a dislike for factory-produced and packaged foodstuffs. They are becoming interested in products that can be sold directly to them at a cheaper price, while preserving all the freshness from the tree or animal. It is important here that the country area is not only characterised by a specific product, but markets this idea well. For example, many areas of country Victoria have developed widespread grape growing and winemaking facilities and encourage wine tasting tourism, now a thriving industry with an international patronage. Similarly, Harcourt is famous for apples, Shepparton for mature cheeses, and Mildura for its citrus products. Such strategies, done well, give hope that rural areas can revitalise somewhat and once again be lively and interesting places to live in.
That is the end of section 4. You now have half a minute to check your answers. That is the end of the listening test.